I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now.
My position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
And he lied to Megyn Kelly's face, and definitely not a good idea to lie to her face and try to humiliate her on her own tour. I personally would have strongly advised against it, okay? If somebody said, is this a good idea? I would have said, you know what, let's maybe not do that. But it happened. And it's important to stress here that this was not just a simple mistake that Ben made.
I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now.
My position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
There is quite a bit of infighting happening in what is considered to be the American right, right-wing pundits, conservatives, and it really has to do with disagreements about Israel. Let's just keep it real. There is the half of the Republican base that wants to defend and support anything and everything Israel does. And then there's the younger crowd that's a little more savvy to the reality that the US alliance to Israel has been detrimental to the American people. I'm not on the right, but I certainly agree with the latter. Candace Owens, to her credit, also agrees that the US relationship with Israel is detrimental, and that has made her a target. She got fired from the Daily Wire as a result of her commentary about Israel, and things have only gotten more spicy since then. Now, Megyn Kelly is currently doing a tour in front of live audiences, and she's had various figures on her, tour to speak about various issues. Some of them spicy, some of them just the typical policy-related stuff. And recently, she had Ben Shapiro on. Now, what was interesting is, for the first time in my life, I'm watching Candace Owens's show pretty much on a regular basis. I think, she says things that I don't agree with, that's for sure. But I really appreciate what she has to say about what's been going down in Gaza. I agree with her on Israel for sure. And I find what she has to say about the investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk both fascinating, and I think what she's doing is justified because our authorities, our FBI, has, in my opinion, bungled this investigation. And there are all sorts of weird inconsistencies that I personally would like answers to. Now, some people are uncomfortable with Candace Owens doing her own investigation, acting as a sleuth. But the reason why I tell you guys I watch her podcast regularly is because I know what she has claimed and what she hasn't claimed. With that in mind, let's take a look at what Ben Shapiro had to say about Candace Owens as he was on one of her, live speaking tour events.
I think you and I differ on our angle with regard to, for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what?
Because
I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
Now, Megyn Kelly, from what I gather, is not watching Candace's show, certainly not as regularly as I have recently, right? So she's confronted with something that I imagine she would find appalling, but it's a lie. Candace Owens has never said anything about Charlie Kirk's wife being involved in assassinating her own husband. She hasn't even alluded to it. In fact, her audience, if you read the comments a lot of people in her audience are like urging her to look into Erica Kirk. But all I've seen her do is defend Erica Kirk. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like a lie like that, whatever you might feel about Candace Owens, you have to be fair. And a lie like that is pretty freaking gross. And it's especially gross to do it in real time to someone who's supposed to be your friend in order to get that individual to engage in a public condemnation of someone you don't like, Candace Owens. I thought that was so below the belt and honestly a pretty scummy thing to do. Here's the second part of that exchange.
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in that content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch Candace's show.
I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that when
what I understand
friendship
Candace
should not, in our business,
doing.
I think it's important. Listen,
friendship
should not trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
So I think part of the reason why this moment triggered me in particular is because, and I want everyone who's watching this to know this about me, just in case something comes up in the future where people try to egg me on or encourage me to denounce someone that's close to me or denounce someone I work with. Don't come at me and urge me to condemn people to prove my virtue. You get what I'm saying? Like, I find that so utterly disgusting and gross. And it's happened to me in that, people were mad at me over an opinion that I have. And then like a little mob will reach out to John Idarola or whoever I'm associated with and demand a public condemnation of my opinion and what I had to say. And I just want to be very clear about how I feel about individuals who give into that pressure. It's bitch behavior. People are allowed to have their own opinions. And if they decide on their own that someone else has said something, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine has engaged in commentary that I disagree with, if they themselves decide on their own to respond to it or comment on it, that's totally fine. That is 100% okay. But giving into a mob that's like, do you condemn? Do you condemn? Do you condemn? You need to condemn. Do you condemn? They're the worst people. I can't stand them. And I think even less of the individuals who give in to that pressure, just keeping it real. Now, Megyn Kelly didn't give into that pressure and later decided to fact check the claims that Ben Shapiro made. Let's take a look.
He said that Candace has been claiming Erica Kirk was behind the murder of Charlie, which I had not heard, and I was taken aback because that seems like something I would have heard. It's so crazy. And I have since learned it is not true. Candace has not made that claim. And in fact, I've now seen several clips of Candace specifically defending Erica Kirk and saying she would never make a claim like that about Erica and that she is open-minded to other people at Turning Point. That's obvious. She's been making that point. I had heard that point. But she's specifically been defending Erica Kirk, and she's been saying she does not think that of Erica. And in fact, if you read her comments, she's under pressure to make comments about Erica. And so far, what I've seen, she hasn't.
So the facts matter. You might think what Candace is doing is wrong, but you have to at least be accurate about what Candace is actually saying. You can't, smear her as someone who's going around pointing fingers at Erica Kirk when that's not what's actually happening. Now, just based on what she has said, she does seem to think that there are people within the Turning Point organization who are part of some sort of cover up. And to be fair to her, she keeps providing, evidence in the form of text exchanges and that end up, bolstering or reinforcing the arguments that she's making. But again, I just want all of you to consider if someone close to you, and Charlie was close to her, was publicly assassinated like that, and you have Kash Patel as the head of the FBI, and from the very beginning, he's bungled all of it. You're going to want to know the truth. You want justice for your friend. I would be beside myself if I were in Candace's shoes. And by the way, let's also acknowledge, like, she is grieving the loss of her friend. And when you're in the process of grieving, I remember after Michael Brooks died, for 6 months straight, I was probably the most unbearable person to work with. I was deeply depressed. And I remember Brett Ehrlich at one point, because I like snapped at him. I don't even remember what it was about, but Brett Ehrlich, to his credit, finally spoke up and he's like, you got to stop doing this. And that was when I realized I've been grieving. I have not processed it in a healthy way. So that's when I just decided I'm going to get help and I'm going to speak to a therapist and try to get myself out of this depressive state because I'm taking this out on other people. You don't know how people handle this level of grief. And so, I just think even if you disagree with Candace Owens, have a little bit of grace, maybe a little bit. Now, with that in mind, Candace Owens has weighed in on this whole debacle as well. Let's take a look at what she has to say.
This was not just a simple mistake that Ben made, right? That's always a possibility that Ben really thought maybe he's backstage and sees something on Twitter and somebody said, Candace just said that Erica Kirk murdered Charlie, and then he gets on stage and he repeats it. Maybe it's just an accident, highly unlikely, but of course you have to run that plausibility. But we can now confirm that that certainly was not the case. This was not a simple mistake because in the days following it, he didn't recant. He did not modify, he did not correct. He has a platform. He could have just come out and said, oh, I got the details wrong. Nope, this was a premeditated and a post-meditated lie, okay? Intended to morally blackmail Megyn into a position to decide right now on the spot whether you are going to stand with evil Candace, who was accusing Erica Kirk of murdering her own husband. And that lie backfired gloriously.
It did backfire, and it was a gross thing to do. It really was. This is how you lose. Like, I just think I think those on the right who are very concerned about criticism toward Israel, who want to do anything and everything possible to protect Israel, including smearing their own fellow Americans into silence, basically, so they stop criticizing Israel. Your actions are making things worse for your cause. So stop doing it. Just stop doing it. Don't lie. Don't pressure people during their own tour to condemn people that you don't like. Because guess what? The entire world sees it. The country sees it. They don't like it. So it's not helping your cause. It is backfiring. I can't stand this kind of behavior. Just be honest. And if you don't like what Candace is doing, that's totally fine. Just say it. Share your point of view. But don't smear people. Don't lie about people. And more importantly, please stop with the guilt by association garbage. Megyn Kelly will condemn Candace if she feels the need to do it. She's her own person. She has agency. Everyone has their own agency. They can make their own decisions. Please stop with like the mob behavior. No one likes it.
The behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. I have text messages, Megyn, calling me an anti-Semite. I am learning biblical Hebrew and writing a book on the Shabbat. I honor the Shabbat. Literally the Jewish Sabbath. It is dozens of texts.
Yes.
Then we start to say, hold the boat here. And to be fair, some of my really good Jewish friends are like, that's not all of us, it's all, but these are leaders too though, right? These are stakeholders, right?
Well, back in August, Megyn Kelly spoke to Charlie Kirk about some of the extreme pressure that they both were facing in order to agree with anything and everything that the Israeli government demanded of them. And the topic actually came back again yesterday with Megyn Kelly essentially referencing their exchange on social media. But all that did was lead to a fresh round of backlash toward Kelly, including from a group of vocal critics who absolutely demanded that she disavow Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and essentially sever ties with them. And I have to say, whatever you might think about all the different figures involved in the story, I am going to give Megyn Kelly major props for her reaction, her response. So we'll get to them in a second, but first, a bit of context. So the right wing has been debating this letter that Charlie Kirk sent to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in May of this year. Now, Netanyahu had referenced that letter, or at least one part of that letter, in interviews that he did shortly after Charlie Kirk was violently and viciously assassinated. And he also claimed that Charlie Kirk was, a huge supporter, highly supportive of Israel. Others like Owens and Carlson, though, disputed that narrative. Okay, so look, I'll give you guys a little bit of background. I don't think that I'm disclosing anything that's not allowed, but if you guys can remember, I was on Tucker Carlson's show at one point this year, and I got a text message from Tucker Carlson shortly after it aired. And he told me that Charlie Kirk loved it. He thought it was an excellent conversation. And Charlie would like you to go on his show to talk about these issues. And so it was basically Tucker's way of letting me know that Charlie Kirk liked what I had to say about Israel and wanted to discuss it further on his podcast. Now, obviously, I hadn't gone on Charlie Kirk's podcast before he was assassinated, but I do think that he had criticisms of what Israel is carrying out in Gaza. He had been on the record. He was very vocal against invading Iran for a regime change war. Now, the full letter has come out and I've read it. And to be honest with you, that letter does not make it appear as though Charlie Kirk hated Netanyahu. But there had been other criticisms that he had either uttered himself, not as strongly in terms of criticism, but he had slowly but surely started criticizing some of the conduct of the Israeli government. That's not really shocking or surprising if you've been paying attention to this story. Now, in that letter, for the most part, Kirk shied away from any strong criticism of Israel. Instead, he advised Netanyahu and his government to essentially work on social media outreach in order to stop young conservative Americans from turning against Israel. And so yesterday, Kelly posted about her conversation with Kirk, writing, "The Charlie Kirk letter to Bibi is interesting for obvious reasons, but if you want to hear Charlie in his own words speaking to a friend regarding his feelings on Israel and the pressure on him, it's all here on August 6th. No filter needed. Just listen to him." And he was very upset in that conversation because he felt that the criticism that he had leveled against the Israeli government had led to smears against him, allegations that he's anti-Semitic. You get the picture. But rather than address the substance of Megyn Kelly's post, she was told by multiple people that she has to absolutely wash her hands of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. So here's one of the responses. Florida Dad wrote on X, "If you can't separate yourself from Candace Owens, many of us are going to separate ourselves from you. We do not have to align with everyone that claims to be of the right when their motives and history are as shady as hers." And Kelly actually responded to that post in particular, saying, "Look at this. No, I have no obligation to separate myself from anyone. I run my own media company and my own show. That show is where I express my own opinions, and I will decide what not to opine on. If you need me to condemn Candace or Tucker for their opinions in order to listen to me, then I may not be for you. He's a close friend and she is under enough pressure without gratuitous shots from me. My fight is with the left, not these two." I didn't like that very last part. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all Americans. So let's have a discussion about what suits Americans as opposed to what's the best for Israel and Israel supporters. But nonetheless, overall, I really appreciated that message. She caught some heat from others as a result of that response. I'll go to that in a minute, but Cenk, I wanted to get your thoughts first.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts, but I'm also curious about the audience's thoughts here because we've got an interesting live audience that's mixed politics. So we're doing something on the live chat, and I like it when you guys are part of the show. Will Megyn Kelly gain or lose support because of this? Okay, and I'm curious what you guys think of that. I think if she sticks with it, and there's an interesting update here about a rumor regarding Megyn Kelly that I'm going to get to in a second. But if she sticks with the stance, I think she'll gain support. In fact, to that point, Anna, I think that the Florida Dad guy and all those things, other than a couple of folks who are actual influencers that we know their names and they stand with Israel, etc. I think all the rest of them, I don't think they're real right wingers. I mean, they might be right wingers who are pro-Israel, but they're mainly Israel firsters, right? So the Israel First crowd does this hilarious thing where they're like, well, everyone on the right loves Israel. And so if you're criticizing Israel, or you're not condemning Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for criticizing Israel, then you know what? All of the right wing is gonna leave you. All right, well, let's see how that turns out. Our audience is guessing that 71, 72% of you that they're not going to leave, that she's going to gain support for not criticizing Tucker and Candace, etc. Right? And that's exactly what Netanyahu's in a panic over. He's like, oh, we're losing them, right? So there was a rumor today, and which she vehemently denies, and I hope that she's telling the truth, and it's her denial made me believe that she is telling the truth, that CBS was going to offer her a large contract. Now remember, CBS bought by pro-Israel zealots, and they also bought Free Press and they said they said in the New York Post that they're overpaying for Free Press because they're pro-Israel, right? So now if they go around and go, hey, you know what, we know how to stem the tide. We'll grab Megyn Kelly and a couple other big right wingers because we really need to hold the wall on the right wing. And we'll just bribe them. We'll give them 20 million, 40 million a year. And it seems like a normal contract. They used to have those kind of giant contracts in TV back in the day when TV made a lot of money. Nobody will notice. But that way we'll say, hey, you know what? Oh, we are not telling you to be pro-Israel. We are just saying we are going to give you a lot of money, right? Just like we did with Free Press. But Megyn Kelly says, no, that rumor's nonsense. I didn't go to CBS. They didn't make an offer, etc. But I am a little worried that that's the next strategy. But there is one strategy they're getting massively wrong, Anna. And this whole thing of like that they've done to the left for the entirety of our lives. Like if you criticize Israel, it's anti-Semite, cancel them, fire them, right? And then later arrest, deport, etc. Now, when you do it to the right, you're doing it to the wrong hombres. Guys who've been called racist and this and sexist and every other word 1,000 times over. That stuff bounces off of them. In fact, it makes them hate you. So Israel,
that's a good point.
Please do us a favor and keep calling Megyn Kelly and Tucker and everyone else anti-Semites. Call all the right-wing influencers anti-Semites, because then the country will be in favor of the like 90% in favor of the Palestinians within a couple of months. And that's partly what's spreading this like wildfire. They don't realize that they're adding fuel to the fire. They're like, oh, now all of you right-wingers, you're all terrible people. You hate Jews. You are full of hate. We should cancel you, right? Good luck with that strategy. I think that's a terrible strategy. I probably shouldn't say anything. Oh no, Israel, please do not do that.
I know, it's just so short-sighted. And I think part of the problem for Israelis who carry out that tactic is it worked for so long because it's always been the left side of the political aisle that's been critical of Israel's conduct and treatment of the Palestinian people. Now you have a growing number of right-wing voices who are willing to speak out against it, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, obviously Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. Megyn Kelly is still very much supportive of Israel, but she was willing to float the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad asset, as did Charlie Kirk, by the way. And so I think you make a really great point about how calling them anti-Semites or Jew haters isn't going to work the same way that it has for the left. In fact, it's probably going to have the opposite reaction. But in regard to the reactions to Megyn Kelly's response, to calls to sever her relationship with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, Jonah Goldberg says, so you will condemn anti-Semites on the left, not because they're anti-Semites, but because they're on the left. But you won't condemn anti-Semites who are on the right or your friends because they're not? Okay, at least that's a position, I guess. I don't think she actually believes, as I'm in the same camp, by the way, she doesn't believe that Tucker Carlson is an anti-Semite. I don't believe for a second that Tucker Carlson is an anti-Semite. I just don't. I think Tucker Carlson cares about the United States. I think like any other human being who sees endless videos and photos of little children maimed and slaughtered, he's had a negative reaction to that. And it's not about identity. It's not about religion. It's not about the Jews. It's about a specific Israeli government that is completely unhinged and carrying out atrocities with impunity. And he's willing to speak out against that. And the idea that he should be smeared as an anti-Semite for having a problem with a country that uses our weapons to carry out said atrocities is insane to me. So I'm glad that Megyn Kelly isn't falling for that trap. Joel Berry responds, loyalty to friends above all else is an admirable trait. I actually agree with that. It makes you a good friend. I'm not sure that's a luxury afforded to trustworthy journalists, though. Well, Joel, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. For me, the fact that she's unwilling to disavow and sever ties with people who she probably doesn't even think are anti-Semitic because they're not is a good thing. And then we'll end with this exchange between Kelly and Konstantin Kisin, who of course is very supportive of the Israeli state. He says, the problem with this approach, which many on the right are taking, is that this is exactly how the left allowed its own extremists to first flourish and then to become the face of the entire movement. If you agree with Candace and Tucker, people will respect that. But to many of us, their behavior is so extreme and so deranged that the idea that it can be simply ignored because your fight is with the left doesn't wash. So I'm curious, Konstantin, a video went viral yesterday featuring a doctor at Nasser Hospital getting shot and killed with a drone attack. He got shot through a hospital window. The Israelis used a drone to do it. There's video. He's a doctor. He was in the hospital working. Is that not extreme and deranged? And more importantly, why don't you ever speak out about those atrocities? Because I sure as hell believe that you would speak out against that atrocity if it was committed by Hamas. If Hamas had that type of weaponry and did the same thing to an Israeli doctor inside an Israeli hospital, I would speak out against that atrocity because that's a disgusting act. But for some reason, it's more important to hear Megyn Kelly disavow other right-wing voices because they're not playing along with this dog and pony show in regard to the Israeli government and their military operations in Gaza and the West Bank. Yeah. And then she responded with, the more, oh God, I love, this is like my favorite tweet of hers of all time because it resonates with me so much. The more one insists that I say what one demands me to, the more committed I get in my refusal. I need everyone to put that in their pipe and smoke it, not just in regard to this context and this story, but just in general as it pertains to, yes, Megyn Kelly, but also me. Back to you, Cenk.
Yeah, so a lot to say about this. So I saw the same video of the doctor. He got shot in the head, by the way. Israel didn't claim he's a terrorist or anything. They're like, no, we're just randomly executing doctors in Gaza. By the way, it's a twofer. Not only do you murder the doctor, but you also prevent him from treating injured Palestinians and kids and stuff like that, so they can die too. The Israeli government at this point are obvious terrorists. They have a worse civilian kill ratio than Hamas does, and they've killed 500 times the number of children. So it is a terrorist state right now, and if you're offended by that and want to call me an anti-Semite, I laugh at you. I laugh at you at the top of my lungs. I think you're a buffoon who's a racist and a bigot against Palestinians, and you don't mind them being murdered, and I find you to be morally repugnant. So what's interesting to me is that the right wing hasn't experienced this at all. Like, that's such an amazing thing. Like, we've experienced it our whole lives because I guess they've never ever criticized Israel before. And there's a reason why, I'm gonna get to that in a second. But now that for the first time, they just smidge of criticism to Israel, boom, they get hit with the same blast of, you're an anti-Semite, cancel them, ruin them, right? And they're like, whoa, what is this? Well, welcome to our world. That's the world we've been living in this whole time. And so thank you for mustering up the courage to criticize a foreign government, especially when you're on the right. That should be a relatively easy ask. But no, Konstantin and others say there should be an exception for Israel. So cancel culture is terrible, terrible, unless you're doing it for Israel. Then of course, cancel culture is the best. Cancel anyone who criticizes Israel. Cancel, right? So that we're totally used to it. And Konstantin, you could do, and look, There's some small number of things I agree and respect Constantine on. There's a lot of things we disagree on, but this opinion is ridiculous. And by the way, does not speak for the right wing at all. That's the other thing that's so arrogant about the Israeli supporters. They're like, I will speak on behalf of the whole country and the right wing. We all think that everyone who disagrees is an anti-Semite. You don't speak for anyone, dude. Look at the polls, look at the polls. You lost the right wing, you lost the left wing. And now this important thing that they're doing here is another tactic, again, the left is very used to, and now the right is beginning to find out about. Smear by proxy. Oh, Tucker said something that Jonah Goldberg thought was anti-Semitic. Ooh, okay, wow, I'll have to take that under consideration. So that means Megyn Kelly, you are smeared by proxy. Why? Did you say Tucker Carlson's the greatest thing ever? No. No, you have to actively disavow him. Why do they do that? Because they want to isolate anyone who criticizes Israel and make them feel toxic and untouchable. Yep. So that no one agrees with them, and then they could cancel the hell out of them and eject them from the national conversation. So this is like Israeli propaganda 101. And if you're on the right wing and you're now experiencing this for the first time, give me a call. I'll tell you the whole playbook they're gonna run against you, okay?
Totally.
And how they're gonna try to ruin your career and your life. Everybody in mainstream media knows it. That's why they never criticize Israel. Why do you think you think every cable news anchor is a monster who thinks murdering 20,000 Palestinian kids is no big deal? No, they all know it's terrible, but they're scared to death of losing their multi-million-dollar job because there's a bunch of thugs inside this country that are pro-Israel and are on a warpath to eliminate anyone who disagrees. Now, finally, guys, the most important thing here is why Megyn Kelly is refusing their demands. And Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly have made reference to this before. They said when they were on Fox News, it was different. Why is it different? Now, I'll explain to you why it's different. Because at Fox News, you have a $20 million contract. And Rupert Murdoch loves and serves Israel. So, you know, if you criticize Israel, you're gonna lose your $20 million a year contract. So that, shh. But now that they run their own company, as she said, and their own show, they have to serve the audience. So if they say things that are popular, they make more money. If they say things that are unpopular, they make less money. They have less viewers, etc. So now their incentives are in the right place. Make your actual audience happy, not some rando foreign government, because your boss, a media executive, loves Israel, right? By the way, Rupert Murdoch is not Jewish, so this has nothing to do with religion. There's a bunch of people who are pro-Israel in this country that are such giant zealots that they will eliminate anyone on behalf of Israel. But now they can't eliminate Megyn Kelly. She has her own show. They can't eliminate Tucker. They can't eliminate us. And it's driving them crazy. And I love it. That's right, Anna. Freedom. Hashtag freedom. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.